Welcome to Hearths of Myths. Tonight, the air is still, and the darkness outside is absolute. It is the perfect canvas for us to paint with light. Close your eyes, settle into the warmth of your blankets, and let the heavy curtains of the modern world fall away. We are going back. Before the noise of engines, before the glow of electric street lamps, before the ticking of mechanical clocks. We are going back to a time when time itself was measured not by gears, but by the breathing of a god. We are traveling to the very edge of the world, to the shores of the river Oceanus, where the mist curls like sleeping dragons and the sky waits, trembling, for the arrival of its king. Tonight, we speak of the fire. We speak of the Watcher. We speak of Helios. To understand the sun, we must first understand the darkness from which he rises. In the genealogy of the divine, in the ancient songs sung by Hesiod and the priests of the mystery cults, Helios is not merely a star. He is a titan. He is of the older order, the primal lineage that bridged the gap between the raw, chaotic forces of Gaia, the earth, and the structured political rule of the Olympians who would come later. His father was Hyperion, the High One, the Titan of heavenly light, the Pillar of the East. His mother was Theia, the Titaness of sight, and the shining ether, she who gave gold, silver, and gems their intrinsic sparkle. Think of the significance of this union. The high light married the glittering sight. When pure radiance met the capacity to perceive it, the result was the celestial luminaries. From this marriage of light and vision, 3 children were born, each a distinct aspect of the heavens. There was Selene, the white-armed moon, who drives her silver bulls through the night, washing the world in pale, ghostly melancholy. There was Eos, the rosy-fingered dawn, the harbinger, she who paints the edges of the horizon in saffron and violet, opening the gates for the day. And then there was the central figure, the blazing heart of the triad, Helios. The myths tell us he was born in the deep east, in a palace of unimaginable splendor, located on the far banks of the earth-encircling river Oceanus. Imagine this place. It is not built of stone or mortal brick. It is a construct of living metallurgy. The walls are forged from solid bronze that hums with a low, resonant frequency, a vibration that is the sound of light itself. The columns are of gold, so pure and soft that they seem to weep liquid light. The roof is tiled with ivory and electrum, catching the faintest glimmer of the stars and amplifying it 1,000-fold. Here, in this hall of eternal brilliance, Helios grew. He was not like the other gods who walked the earth in disguise or meddled in the petty affairs of mortals for amusement. His nature was different. His nature was absolute. He was the Panoptes, the all-seeing. Let us visualize him as the ancient poets did. He is not an abstract ball of gas. He is a figure of terrifying beauty. He stands taller than the mountains. His body is not made of flesh and blood, but of ichor and fire. His skin glows with a terrifying luminescence, a golden sheen that would blind a mortal eye instantly. He wears a tunic of purple, the color of royalty and twilight, embroidered with threads of spun sunlight. But it is his head, his face, that commands the worship of the world. He is crowned with the aureole, the sun disk. It is a halo of jagged, living rays, spikes of pure energy that extend from his temples like a mane of fire. His eyes are described as Denu, terrible or awesome. They are eyes that do not blink. They are eyes that see everything, every secret whispered in a dark room, every crime committed in a forest, every oath sworn, and every oath broken. He is the cosmic witness. But a king needs a chariot, and the chariot of Helios is perhaps the most significant object in all of Greek mythology, a machine of divine engineering that defies the laws of physics. It was forged by Hephaestus, the smith god, as a gift to the Titan, or perhaps it existed before Hephaestus, born from the raw materials of the cosmos. The poets describe it with breathless adoration. The yoke is made of gold, inlaid with gems that do not exist on earth, stones that drink darkness and vomit light. The pole is of silver. The wheels are the most miraculous part. They are not solid. They are spinning vortexes of fire, rimmed with solar plasma, spokes that blur into a continuous sheet of radiance. When this chariot moves, it does not roll. It burns a path through the ether. And then the beasts, the quadriga, the 4 horses of the sun. Their names change depending on which poet is singing, but the most evocative names given by Ovid and Hyginus tell us of their nature. There is Pyroa, the fiery one, who represents the initial explosive heat of the sunrise. There is Eos, the of the dawn, who represents the clarity of the morning light. There is Phaethon, the blazing, who represents the intolerable heat of high noon. And there is Phlegon, the burning, who represents the lingering heavy warmth of the afternoon. These are not horses of flesh. They are spirits of fusion and power, trapped in an equine form. Their manes are not hair, but tongues of flame that whip in the cosmic wind. Their hooves are made of diamond, harder than any substance in the universe, for they must tread upon the fragile dome of the sky without shattering it. Their breath is not air. They exhale fire. A constant roaring stream of sparks and plasma issues from their nostrils with every snort. To harness them is a feat that requires strength beyond that of Zeus himself. Only Helios, with his hands protected by magical oils and his will made of iron, can hold the reins. Every morning, the ritual begins. It is the heartbeat of the world. While humanity sleeps, while the dew settles on the grass, the palace in the east stirs. Eos, the sister, goes first. She rises from her bed, leaving her lover Tithonus, and opens the great gates of the morning. These gates are described as being made of clouds and varying winds. As they swing open, the darkness of the night is torn asunder. The stars, the children of Aeetes, flee in terror, diving into the ocean to hide from the approaching glory. Helios mounts the chariot. He takes the reins in his left hand, the whip in his right. The horses feel his weight, and they scream, a sound like 1,000 trumpets, a sound like the cracking of a glacier. They rear up, their hooves striking the eastern horizon. This moment, the sunrise, is violence. It is not a gentle awakening. It is a conquest. The horses launch themselves from the solid earth of the banks of Oceanus into the steep incline of the sky. The path is treacherous. The sky is not a flat plain. It is a steep dome, a mountain of air. The first part of the journey is an almost vertical ascent. The horses struggle, their muscles bunching and rippling under coats of fire. They must climb out of the damp, heavy mists of the ocean and into the thin, rarefied air of the upper atmosphere, the ether. Helios must hold them back, checking their speed, for if they run too fast, the day will be too short. If they run too slow, the earth will freeze. He is the master of time. He regulates the rhythm of existence. As he climbs, he looks down, and this is where the myth becomes a story of surveillance. Helios sees everything. He sees the farmer sowing his seed in the rocky soil of Attica. He sees the soldier sharpening his sword in the barracks of Sparta. He sees the lovers meeting in the olive groves of Lesbos. He sees the thief creeping through the markets of Corinth. Nothing is hidden from the golden eye. This omniscience is his burden. He is the keeper of truth. In ancient Greece, when men swore the most solemn oaths, they did not swear by Zeus or Poseidon. They swore by Helios. I swear by the sun who sees all. To break an oath sworn by Helios was to invite the gaze of the god to turn into a glare, to wither the perjurer like a dry leaf. By mid-morning, the chariot reaches the upper air. The light becomes white and hard. The shadows on the earth shrink, hiding under rocks and trees, terrified of the master. The heat begins to build. This is the hour of Phaethon, the blazing horse. The world below creates a hum of activity, fueled by the energy raining down from the chariot wheels. The crops grow, the grapes ripen on the vine, the salt dries in the pans. Helios is the engine of life. Without him, the earth is a frozen rock floating in a void. He is the biological father of the ecosystem. But the journey is long, and it is lonely. High in the zenith, at the very top of the sky, Helios pauses for a fraction of a second. This is high noon, the point of perfect balance. Here, the horses are calmest, running in a smooth, thundering gallop across the roof of the world. From this vantage point, Helios can see the entirety of the flat disk of the earth. He sees the circle of the Mediterranean, the pillars of Heracles in the west, the snows of the Caucasus in the east, the sands of Libya in the south, and the dark forests of Hyperborea in the north. He is alone in the ether. The other gods have their feasts on Olympus, their quarrels, their affairs. Helios has his duty. He is the workman of the cosmos. He cannot stop. He cannot rest. He cannot descend to walk among men, for his presence would incinerate them. He is condemned to eternal distance, to be the observer who can never touch the world he sustains. The descent begins in the afternoon. The horses are tired now. Their fire burns a deeper red. The path slopes downward toward the west, toward the evening land, Hesperia. This is the most dangerous part of the drive. The horses smell the barn. They smell the rest that awaits them, and they want to rush. They want to plummet down the sky. Helios must lean back, straining the muscles of his arms, pulling the bits hard against their mouths to keep them from crashing into the sea. The light turns golden, then orange, then blood red. The shadows lengthen again, stretching out like fingers trying to grasp the retreating god. Finally, the chariot touches the western horizon. The waters of the Oceanus in the west hiss as the burning wheels make contact. The sun sinks. To the mortals watching from the shore, it looks like the death of the god. The light bleeds out of the sky, and the violet bruise of twilight spreads. But for Helios, the work is not done. How does the sun get back to the east? If he sets in the west, How does he rise in the east the next morning? The ancients, in their ingenuity, solved this problem with a magical object. Waiting for Helios in the west is a great vessel. It is described by the poets Mimnermus and Stesichorus as a hollow cup or a winged cauldron made of pure gold, forged by the same divine smith, Hephaestus. It is a boat that is not a boat. It is a bed, a cradle that floats on the surface of the river Oceanus. Helios unhitches the horses. The beasts, exhausted, their fire dimmed to a low, coal-like glow, are led onto the golden cup. The chariot is loaded, and then the Titan himself steps in. The cup is magical. It catches the swift, subterranean currents of the Oceanus, the river that flows underneath the world, through the dark caverns of Tartarus, through the roots of the earth. While the world sleeps, Helios travels through the dark. This is the night journey, the Nekia of the sun. He floats through the blackness, resting on his golden bed, drifting rapidly from west to east, carried by the secret waters. It is a time of regeneration. In the womb of the golden cup, the god's strength returns. The fire in the horses' bellies is stoked. The wheels of the chariot cool and reharden. He passes the dreams of men, passes the realm of the dead, passes the foundations of the mountains. He arrives back in the east, at the golden palace, just before Eos wakes up. He steps out of the cup, ready to begin the cycle again. It is an eternal circle, a loop of labor and light. This is the existence of Helios, a life of magnificent monotony, of supreme power and supreme servitude. He is the king of the sky, but he is also the slave of the cycle. But there are stories, ancient, whispered stories, that tell us Helios was not always content to simply watch. There were times when the watcher wanted to participate. There were times when the fire wanted to touch the earth. And the most significant of these moments concerns a specific piece of land, a place where the sun did not just shine, but where the sun lived. We must understand that in the primordial division of the world, when Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades were drawing lots for the dominion of the cosmos, Helios was absent. He was up in the sky, driving the chariot, doing his job. He was not there to claim his share. When he returned, the earth had been divided. Poseidon had the seas, Zeus the sky, Hades the underworld, and the other gods had claimed their sacred cities. Athena had Athens, Hera had Argos, Apollo had Delphi. There was nothing left for the sun. Helios stood before Zeus, his light dimming with righteous anger. He demanded a portion. He demanded a home. Zeus, fearing the wrath of the Titan, offered to recast the lots, to start the division over. But Helios, with his panoptis eyes, saw something the others did not. He looked down through the blue waves of the Aegean Sea. He saw something growing in the depths. He saw an island. It was not yet land. It was a seed of earth, rising slowly from the bottom of the sea. It was lush, beautiful, and rich. Helios told Zeus, "Do not cast the lots again. Give me that rock which is rising from the salt water. Let that be my domain." Zeus agreed. Lachesis, the Fate, nodded her head. And so the island rose. It broke the surface of the water, shaking off the foam and the seaweed. It was Rhodes, the island of the sun. This was to be his sanctuary, the one place on earth where he could walk, where he was not just a distant star, but a husband, a father, and a king. But the island was not empty when it rose. It held secrets. It held ancient, dangerous powers that would intertwine with the legacy of the sun. As the water drained away from the new land, revealing valleys of emerald green and peaks of limestone, Helios descended. He did not come with his chariot. He came in his anthropomorphic form, a giant of golden skin and burning hair. He stepped onto the soil of Rhodes, and the flowers bloomed instantly at his touch. The hibiscus, the rose, the sunflower, they sprang up in his footprints. The island warmed. It became a paradise of perpetual summer. But he was not alone. From the mud of the new island, strange creatures emerged. The Telchines. These were the original inhabitants of Rhodes, children of the sea and the earth. They were not human. They were fish children, flippered and webbed with heads like dogs. They were wizards, demons of the deep, and master smiths. It is said they forged the trident of Poseidon and the sickle of Cronus. They were the first to work metal, the first to mix bronze and iron. Helios, in his wisdom, did not destroy them. He formed an alliance. The light and the shadow worked together. The Telchines built his temples. They crafted statues that could move and walk on their own. But their magic was dark. They could summon storms and blight crops with the evil eye. Eventually, they would be driven out by Zeus, but in the beginning, they were the neighbors of the sun. And it was here, on this sacred island, that Helios found love. He did not court a goddess of Olympus. He courted the nymph of the island itself. Her name was Rhodos. She was the daughter of Poseidon and Halia, the sea salt. She was the personification of the land he had chosen. Their union was the marriage of fire and water, of the sky and the island. Helios loved her with a burning intensity. For her, he slowed his chariot as he passed over the island, making the days in Rhodes longer and sweeter than anywhere else on earth. From this union, 7 sons were born, the Heliodai. These were the first kings of Rhodes: Ochimus, Cercaphus, Macarius, Actis, Tenages, Triopas, and Candalus. These were not mere mortals. They were demigods, filled with the intellect of their father. Helios taught them secrets that he had seen from his high vantage point. He taught them the movement of the stars. He taught them how to divide the day into hours, how to navigate by the constellations. The myths tell us that the Heliodai were the first astronomers. They built great observatories on the peaks of Rhodes. They charted the zodiac. One of them, Actis, is said to have traveled to Egypt, founding the city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun, and teaching the Egyptian priests the secrets of the heavens. Thus, the wisdom of the Nile, the great astronomical knowledge of the pharaohs, was said to be a gift from the sons of Helios. But where there is light, there is shadow, and the lineage of the sun is marked by a peculiar curse. The fire of Helios burns in the blood of his children, making them brilliant, but also volatile, passionate, but prone to madness. Among the 7 brothers, a tragedy occurred. Teenagers, the most gifted of them all, the one who could read the future in the clouds, was envied by his brothers. The envy grew hot and festering, like a wound left in the sun. 4 of the brothers, Macarius, Candalus, Actis, and Triopas, conspired against him. In a moment of darkness on the bright island, they murdered 10 edges. The first blood was spilled on the sacred soil. The innocence of the island was broken. Helios saw it. He sees everything. But even a god cannot stop the free will of his children. He banished the murderers, scattering them across the Aegean, seeding the fire of his bloodline into other lands, spreading the curse and the blessing of the solar race. The remaining sons stayed, and the civilization of Rhodes flourished. But the heart of Helios was heavy. He realized that while he could illuminate the world, he could not burn away the darkness in the human heart. And this realization was only a prelude to the greatest sorrow of his immortal life, a sorrow that would nearly destroy the world. For Helios had other children. Children not born on the safe soil of Rhodes, but born of fleeting encounters, of secrets kept in the dark. And one of these children, a boy with eyes like burning coals and a spirit too big for his mortal frame, was growing up far away, looking at the sky, wondering who his father was. His name was Phaethon, the Shining One, and his story is the story of what happens when a mortal tries to touch the divine. It is the story of the fall. As we leave the shores of Rhodes and the ancient turning wheels of the daily journey, we must prepare ourselves for the tragedy. We must prepare to enter the golden palace of the sun, not as a god, but as a boy, asking for a birthright that will kill him. The sky is turning gray. The mists of the dawn are gathering. The horses are stamping in their stalls, sensing the disturbance in the ether. The reins are waiting. But are the hands that will hold them strong enough? The chariot has ascended. The horses of the sun are now galloping across the high zenith of the sky, their hooves striking sparks against the firmament. Below them, the world is a tapestry of blues and greens, a vast breathing organism warmed by the fires of the Titan. But as we look down from this divine vantage point, our gaze is drawn to a specific jewel in the Aegean Sea, a landmass that seems to pulse with a unique golden light, distinct from the surrounding islands. This is Rhodes, the physical manifestation of the sun's desire. To understand the sacredness of this place, we must listen to the voice of Pindar, the great lyric poet of Thebes. In his 7th Olympian ode, written for the boxer Diagoras of Rhodes, he preserves a tradition that predates the common myths of the Olympian gods. He takes us back to the moment of partition, the Great Division. Imagine the scene on Mount Olympus. The war with the Titans is over. The dust has settled. Zeus, the victor, sits on his throne of thunderbolts. Poseidon leans on his trident, the smell of salt heavy in the air. Hades stands in the shadows, his eyes already turning toward the underworld. They are casting lots. They are dividing the body of Gaia, the earth, among themselves. Cities are claimed. Athens goes to the gray-eyed one, Argos to the white-armed Hera, the seas to the earth-shaker. But one god is missing. Helios is not at the council table. He is not arguing for his share. Why? Because he is working. He is driving the chariot. He is fulfilling his eternal duty, maintaining the rhythm of the day while the other gods squabble over territory. And so, in the haste of the division, the all-seeing one is forgotten. No lot is cast for him. No land is set aside for the watcher. When evening comes, and Helios returns to the western halls, he learns of the slight. He stands before Zeus, his aura bristling with indignation. The king of gods, realizing the error and fearing the withdrawal of the light, for what is a kingdom without a sun to shine upon it, offers to cast the lots again. He offers to reshuffle the world. But Helios shakes his head. His eyes, which see through the depths of the ocean as easily as they see through the clouds, have spotted something. Deep beneath the gray, churning waves of the sea, he sees a land growing. It is hidden from the others. It is still in the womb of the ocean, a seed of earth covered in rich, volcanic soil and ancient coral. "Do not cast the lots again," Helios says, his voice resonating like a bell in the silence of Olympus. "I see a land rising from the depths, a land rich in pasture and kindly to flocks. Let that be my portion. Let me have the rock that is not yet born." Zeus agrees. Lachesis, the fate who measures the thread of life, raises her hands and swears a great oath by the river Styx that this land shall belong to the sun forever. And as the oath is spoken, the sea begins to boil. From the white foam, the island rises. It breaks the surface with a roar of cascading water. The cliffs are white as bone. The valleys are already green with sea moss. It is Rhodes. It is born from the water, but it belongs to the fire. As the water drains away, Helios descends. He claims his bride. But the island was not uninhabited. And here, the myth takes a turn into the strange and the chthonic. Before the humans came, before the cities of Lindos, Ialissos, and Chimeros were built, Rhodes was the home of the Telchines. Who were the Telchines? The ancient texts speak of them with a mixture of awe and revulsion. They were the children of the sea, Pontus, and the earth, Gaia, or perhaps of the blood of Uranus that fell into the ocean. They were not men. They were amphibians. Some accounts describe them as having the heads of dogs and the flippers of seals. Others say they were simply dark, slippery giants with webbed fingers. They were the original smiths. Long before Hephaestus set up his forge in the volcano of Etna, the Telchines were hammering metal in the caves of Rhodes. They were the first to mix bronze and iron. They were the first to craft images of the gods. It is said that the trident of Poseidon, the weapon that can shake the earth and shatter rocks, was forged by the Telchines. It is said that the jagged sickle of Cronus, the weapon used to castrate the Sky Father, was their handiwork. But their skill came with a price. They were sorcerers. They practiced a magic that was tied to the weather and the blight. They could summon mists that would rot the grain in the fields. They could mix sulfur and Styx water to create poisons that would kill the fish in the sea. But their most terrifying power was the evil eye. Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, tells us that the gaze of a Telchine could wither a living thing. If they looked at a tree with envy, the leaves would turn black and fall. If they looked at a child, the child would sicken. Helios, the god of pure revealing light, and the Telchines, the creatures of murky, subterranean magic, existed in a strange tension. For a time, they were the guardians of the infant island. They nursed the young Poseidon when he was hidden there by Rhea. But their darkness could not coexist with the solar dominion forever. Their hubris grew. They began to believe they were greater than the gods. They began to poison the rivers of the island they had helped to raise. Zeus, seeing their wickedness, decided to destroy them. He sent a flood, or perhaps a thunderbolt, to scatter them. But warned by Artemis, or perhaps by their own foresight, many fled. They scattered to other islands, to Crete, to Cyprus, carrying their dark metallurgy with them. But the stain of their presence remained in the caverns of Rhodes, a reminder that even the sunniest land has roots in the dark, primordial mud. With the Telchines gone or driven into the shadows, the stage was set for the true dynasty of the sun. Helios did not just rule the land, he married it. The nymph of the island was named Rhodos. She was the daughter of Poseidon and Halia, the goddess of the salt spray. Think of the symbolism here. Helios is the dry, piercing heat of the sky. Rhodos is the wet, saline abundance of the sea. Their union is the perfect alchemical marriage required for life. Heat plus water equals growth. When Helios lay with Rhodos, the island bloomed. The legend says that roses, the flower that shares her name, Rhodon, sprang up wherever they embraced. The hibiscus opened its red petals. The land became fertile, capable of bearing 3 crops a year. It was a golden age, a localized Eden in the middle of the Mediterranean. From this union, 7 sons were born, the Heliadae. Their names were Ochimus, Cercaphus, Macarius, Aeetes, Tenages, Triopas, and Candalus. And there was one daughter, Electrione, whose name means the beaming one, a tragic figure who would die a virgin, revered as a hero. These sons were not like the brutal heroes of later myths. They were not monster slayers or city sacker like Heracles or Achilles. They were distinct. They were the children of the mind of Helios. They were scholar kings. Helios, the watcher, knows the movements of the stars better than any other being. He sees the geometry of the heavens from his chariot. He taught this secret knowledge to his sons. The Heliadae were the first astronomers. They were the first to realize that the year could be divided into seasons and the day into hours. They built great towers on the peaks of Rhodes, not for defense but for observation. They watched the dance of the planets. They calculated the solstices and the equinoxes. Diodorus Siculus, the historian, tells us that they surpassed all other men in knowledge. They introduced the art of navigation to the sailors of the Aegean. Before the Heliadae, men sailed by hugging the coast, terrified of the open water. The sons of the sun taught them to read the night sky, to trust the pole star, to find their way across the trackless waste of the sea. They brought order to chaos. They brought the light of understanding to the darkness of ignorance. But the curse of the solar bloodline, which we will see echoed in the stories of Circe, Pasiphae, and Medea, began here. Intelligence is not the same as wisdom, and brilliance is often accompanied by a burning jealousy. Among the 7 brothers, Tenages was the most gifted. He was the favorite of the muses. His calculations were flawless. His understanding of the weather was so precise it seemed like prophecy. He was beautiful, kind, and beloved by the people of Rhodes, and his brothers hated him for it. It is the oldest tragedy in the world. Cain and Abel, Romulus and Remus, the envy of the lesser for the greater. Macarius, Candalus, Aeetes, and Triopas, 4 of the brothers, conspired in the shadows of the olive groves. They could not bear that Tenages shone brighter than they did. They felt eclipsed in their own land. One day, while Tenages was working in the fields, or perhaps observing the sun from a high cliff, they surrounded him. They did not use weapons of war, for that would leave marks that the father, Helios, would instantly recognize as the work of swords. They wanted it to look like an accident or a brawl. They picked up the tools of the land, heavy stones, spades, the very earth of Rhodes. They struck him down. The light of teen ages was extinguished. The first murder happened in the paradise of the sun. But you cannot hide a crime from Helios. As he drove his chariot overhead, he saw the deed. He saw the blood of his most talented son soaking into the white limestone of the island. His grief was a sudden clouding of the sky. His rage was a heat wave that withered the vines. Yet, Helios is also a god of justice and order. He did not incinerate the murderers instantly. He banished them. The 4 guilty brothers were cast out of Rhodes, scattered like seeds in the wind. And this dispersion, tragic as it was, is what spread the cult of the sun and the knowledge of astronomy to the rest of the ancient world. Macarius fled to Lesbos, becoming a king there, and bringing the laws of the sun to that green island. Candalus went to Kos. Triopas went to Caria, on the coast of Asia Minor, founding a dynasty that would worship the celestial fire. But the most significant journey was that of Aeetes. Aeetes fled south. He crossed the Great Sea until he reached the delta of the Nile. He came to Egypt, and there, the myth tells us, he founded the city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun. This is a profound connection. The Greeks believed that the immense wisdom of the Egyptians, their pyramids aligned with the stars, their calendar that tracked the flooding of the Nile, was not indigenous. They believed it was a gift from Rhodes. They believed that Aeetes, the son of Helios, taught the Egyptian priests the secrets of his father. He taught them that the sun was the center of life. He taught them the mathematics of the cosmos. When we look at the great obelisks of Egypt, those needles of stone pointed at the sky, capped with gold to catch the first rays of the dawn, we are seeing the legacy of Aeetes. We are seeing the memory of the Heliodai. The knowledge that began on the sacred island of Rhodes became the foundation of the wisdom of the pharaohs. Back on Rhodes, only 2 brothers remained, Ochimus and Cercaphus. They were innocent of the blood of teenagers. Ochimus, the eldest, took the throne. He married the nymph Hegatoria and had a daughter, Sidipe. But the line of succession was complex, and eventually the power passed to Cercaphus and his sons. These sons, Lindus, Ialysus, and Chimerus, would divide the island into 3 city-states. These are the cities that Homer mentions in the Iliad. They built great temples to their grandfather, Helios. The Halia, the festival of the sun, was established. Every year, the people of Rhodes would celebrate their patron, and the highlight of this festival was a sacrifice that speaks to the very nature of the god. They did not just burn incense. They took a chariot, a magnificent vehicle drawn by 4 white horses, and they drove it off the cliffs into the sea. Why? It was a replacement. It was a gift. They believed that Helios's own horses, exhausted from a year of traversing the sky, needed fresh blood, fresh strength. Or perhaps it was a symbolic way of sending the sun back to the underworld, back to the ocean, ensuring that he would rise again. It was a ritual of renewal, paid for in blood and drowning. The island of Rhodes became a beacon of culture. It was famous for its sunlight. It was said that there was not a single day in the year when the sun did not shine on Rhodes. The air was clear, perfect for looking at the stars. The statue that would eventually be built there, the Colossus, was not just a piece of art. It was a theology in bronze. It was the people of Rhodes saying, "We are the children of the light. We do not fear the dark." But even in this golden land, the shadows lingered. The grave of teenagers was there, a reminder of envy. The caves of the Telchines were there, a reminder of ancient, dangerous magic. And deep in the blood of the family, the volatility remained. The sons of Helios were great, but they were flawed. They were builders, thinkers, and kings, but they were also murderers. This duality is the essence of the solar archetype. The sun gives life, but it also scorches. It illuminates the truth, but it can also blind the beholder. And while the Heliadae were building cities and charting stars, another drama was unfolding far away. A drama that would not result in the founding of cities, but in their destruction. Helios, in his travels, had not remained faithful to the nymph Rhodos alone. He was the viewer of all things, and beauty often caught his eye. In the halls of the Oceanids, the daughters of the great world river, he had found Clymene. She was fair, with eyes like the sea, and she bore him a son. This son did not grow up in the golden palaces of the East, nor in the observatories of Rhodes. He grew up in Ethiopia, or perhaps Egypt, on the edge of the world. He grew up watching the chariot pass overhead, feeling a pull in his chest that he could not explain. He was mortal, yet he felt immortal. He was of the earth, yet he dreamed of fire. His name was Phaethon, and as the golden age of Rhodes settles into a prosperous, rhythmic peace, the storm clouds are gathering over the life of this young boy. The stability of the Heliadae, with their charts and their laws, is about to be contrasted with the reckless, desperate ambition of a son who wants to prove he matters. The sun is high. The island of Rhodes is basking in the noon heat. The cicadas are singing in the pine trees. But look to the south. Look to the boy standing on a dune, shielding his eyes, looking up at the burning disk, and whispering the word, "Father." The tragedy is beginning. The wheels of the chariot are turning, and soon they will be given into hands that are too weak to hold them. But before we tell the story of the fall, we must understand the height from which he fell. We must understand the sheer, terrifying magnitude of the power that Phaethon sought to control. The palace of the sun, the starting point of the boy's journey, awaits us. It is a place where mortals were never meant to tread, a place of such blinding intensity that even the gods shield their eyes. As the sun begins to dip towards the west, casting long shadows over the white ruins of Chimeros, let us leave the sacred island. Let us travel to the court of Clymene. Let us listen to the taunts that drove a boy to demand the impossible. The wind is picking up. The waves are crashing against the shore, where the Telchines once worked their dark metal. The air is charged with the static of destiny. The flight of Phaethon is near. The island of Rhodes is a paradise of order, a testament to the constructive power of the sun. But the story we approach now is the antithesis of order. It is a story of chaos, of lines crossed, and of the terrifying reality that even a god cannot retract a sworn oath. We leave the stable earth and turn our gaze to the treacherous, shifting sands of the human heart, and then, inevitably, to the burning sky. Far from the limestone cliffs of Rhodes, in the lands of Ethiopia, or perhaps Egypt, the texts vary, placing the origin on the edge of the known world, lived Clymene. She was a woman of surpassing beauty, an oceanid, a daughter of the deep sea currents. But her eyes were fixed on the heavens. She had been loved by Helios, not the distant Titan, but the present, burning lover. And from this union, a son was born. Phaethon. The name itself vibrates with light. It means the shining one, or the radiant. He grew up tall and proud, with a fire in his spirit that marked him as different from his peers. He did not have the easy, fluid grace of the water nymphs like his mother. He had the restless, consuming energy of his father. He was quick to anger, quick to laugh, and fiercely defensive of his lineage. He walked with his head tilted back, squinting at the sun, whispering to the blinding disk as if it were a family member. But the world of myth is cruel to those who claim divinity without proof. In the schoolyards and gymnasiums of his youth, Phaethon boasted. He told anyone who would listen that his father was the king of the stars, the eye of the world. And then the challenge came. It came from Epiphus, a son of Zeus and Io. Epiphus was a prince of pedigree, arrogant in his own right. He looked at Phaethon with a sneer that cut deeper than a knife. "You are a fool to believe your mother's tears," Epiphus mocked. "You are puffed up with empty words. Your father is not a god. Your mother is lying to cover her shame with a stranger. You are nothing but a bastard of the earth." The insult struck Phaethon in the center of his being. Shame, hot and red, flushed his face. He did not fight. He turned and ran. He ran to Clymene, his mother, and threw himself at her feet, demanding the truth. "If I am born of a heavenly stock," he cried, "give me some proof of my high birth. Confirm my claim to heaven." Clymene, moved by her son's distress, and perhaps stung by the insult to her own honor, raised her arms to the sky. She looked directly into the blinding face of the noon sun, something only a lover of the god could do without pain. "By that brightness marked out by glittering rays," she swore, "by that eye which sees us and hears us, I swear to you, Phaethon, that you are the son of the sun. You are the child of the being who tempers the world. If I lie, may he never rise for me again. But if you doubt, go. Go to the place where he rises. The house of your father is not far from here. Go and ask him yourself." Phaethon did not hesitate. The doubt planted by Epiphus had become a driving need. He packed no bags. He took no companions. He walked east. He crossed the burning sands of Ethiopia. He crossed the mountains of India. He walked until the constellations changed above his head, until the air grew thin and sweet, until the very ground beneath his feet seemed to hum with a golden vibration. He reached the edge of the world, and there, rising out of the mists of the river Oceanus, he saw it, the Palace of the Sun. Ovid, the Roman poet who gives us the most lush description of this place in his Metamorphoses, tells us that the sight alone was enough to blind a mortal. It stood on high columns, bright with radiant gold and bronze that mimicked fire. The roof was covered with polished ivory that gleamed like a second moon. The double doors were made of silver, and upon them the god Vulcan, Hephaestus, had carved the story of the universe. Phaethon stood before these doors, dwarfed by their majesty. He saw the carvings. He saw the sea depicted in silver with the gods of the deep, Triton sounding his conch, Proteus changing his shape, and the Nereids riding on dolphins. He saw the earth, with its men and cities, its forests and beasts, and above it all, he saw the sky, the zodiac, 6 signs on the right door, 6 signs on the left. It was a map of his father's domain. He pushed the doors open. The light that spilled out was not atmospheric. It was elemental. It was the raw stuff of creation. Phaethon shielded his eyes, stumbling forward. He entered the throne room. There, seated on a throne made of a single massive emerald, sat Helios. The god was robed in purple. He was surrounded not by guards, but by the divisions of time itself. On his right and left stood the day, the month, the year, and the century. And the seasons were there. Spring stood wearing a crown of flowers. Summer stood naked, holding a sheaf of wheat. Autumn stood stained with the juice of trodden grapes, and winter stood shivering, his hair white with frost. Helios, with his all-seeing eyes, spotted the boy immediately. He saw the terror in Phaethon's stance, but also the familiarity in his face. The god looked at the boy, the mortal speck in his hall of eternity, and he did not incinerate him. He softened his gaze. He removed the aureole, the crown of glittering rays that made him unbearable to look at, and set it aside. "What brings you here, Phaethon?" Helios asked, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the emerald floor. "Why have you journeyed to this citadel? What do you seek from a father who will not deny you?" Phaethon fell to his knees. "O light of the vast world," he stammered. "O Father, if you will let me use that name, give me a sign. Give me a token so that the world will believe I am your son. Clear this error from my mind." Helios stood up. The Titan stepped down from the emerald throne. He walked to the boy and embraced him. The heat of the god was comforting, not burning. "You are worthy to be called my son," Helios said. "Clymene told you the truth, and to remove all doubt, ask. Ask for any gift you desire. Whatever you want, I will give it to you. I swear this by the Styx, the river of the underworld that binds even the gods." The oath was spoken. The universe locked it into place. The Styx heard the promise of the sun. Phaethon looked up. His eyes darted to the window, where the great chariot stood waiting. He saw the horses, Pirror, Eus, Aethon, and Phlegon, breathing fire, their hooves striking the floor of the stable. He saw the reins that controlled the day. "I want that," Phaethon said, pointing to the chariot. "I want to drive your horses for one day. I want to hold the reins and bring the light to the world." The color drained from Helios's face. The god of light turned pale. He stepped back, regretting the oath the moment the words left the boy's lips. He shook his head, his radiant hair swinging wildly. "You have asked for the one thing I cannot give safely," Helios pleaded. "Phaethon, you are mortal. What you ask for is not a gift. It is a death sentence. You want to do the work of a god, but you have the hands of a man. Even Zeus, who hurls the thunderbolt, cannot drive this chariot. Only I can hold them. Helios began the Suasoria, the speech of persuasion. He tried to terrify the boy with the truth. "The road is steep," he explained. "At the beginning, the horses can barely climb it, fresh as they are in the morning. In the middle of heaven, it is so high that even I often tremble when I look down at the sea and the land. My heart pounds with fear. And the descent. The descent is a precipice. The sea gods wait below, afraid I will crash into them. Tethys herself worries every evening that I will fall. And it is not just the road," Helios continued, his voice rising in desperation. "The sky is not empty. It is filled with monsters. You think you will see groves and cities of the gods? No. You will pass through the jaws of the lion. You will have to dodge the horns of the bull. The archer stands ready with his bow. The crab snaps his claws. And the scorpion. The scorpion curves his poisonous tail across a vast stretch of the sky. You cannot navigate them. The horses breathe fire from their chests," the father warned. "They are hot. They struggle against the bit even when I am driving. They will not know your voice. They will not feel your hands. Withdraw your wish, my son. I swore to give you a gift, not a funeral. Look at my face. You see the light, but can you see the father's anxiety burning in my eyes?" But Phaethon was deaf to wisdom. He was drunk on the proximity of power. He was young, and like all young men, he believed he was immortal. He saw only the glory. He did not see the gravity. He refused to withdraw the wish. Helios looked at the boy. He looked at the sticks. The oath was binding. He could not break it. The time was wasting. Dawn, Eos, was already awake. The stars were fleeing. The moon was fading. "So be it," Helios whispered. He led the boy to the chariot. It was a masterpiece of Vulcan, the axle of gold, the pole of gold, the wheels with tires of silver and spokes of peridot. Phaethon touched it, mesmerized. While the boy admired the machine, the horae, the hours, brought the horses from their high stalls. The beasts were fed on ambrosia and drank from the sweet nectar of the celestial pastures. They were full of energy, snorting flames that licked the ceiling of the palace. The harness was put on. Helios took a sacred oil and smeared it on Phaethon's face, a magical salve to protect his mortal skin from the searing heat of the upper atmosphere. He placed the rays, the aureole, on the boy's head, though it was too heavy, too bright. "Listen to me," Helios said, giving his final advice, the most famous philosophical maxim of the ancient world. "Spare the whip, boy, and use the reins strong. The horses run fast enough of their own accord. The labor is to hold them back. Do not go too straight. Look for the track of the wheel, the ecliptic. Do not go too north, or you will freeze the bears. Do not go too south, or you will burn the altar. Medio tutissimus ibis. You will go safest in the middle. Keep the middle path," the father begged. "Fortune be with you." The doors of the morning opened. Eos threw them wide. The world lay before them, a vast, dark canvas waiting for the paint. Phaethon leaped into the chariot. He took the reins. He felt lighter than air. He laughed. The horses felt it too. That was the moment the tragedy began. The horses of the sun, Pyrrhoa, Eos, Aethon, Phlegon, knew the weight of their master. They knew the heavy, commanding hand of the Titan. But this was nothing, a feather, a phantom. There was no weight in the chariot. The yoke felt empty. They launched. They did not take the middle path. They surged upward, tearing through the mists, screaming with the joy of unchecked speed. They felt no resistance on the reins. The driver was a ghost. Phaethon looked down. The earth was shrinking away. He looked up. The vast expanse of the Empyrean was opening. He pulled the reins to the left. The horses went right. He pulled them back. They surged forward. He did not know their names. He could not call to them. The chariot began to shudder. It swung wildly, like a ship in a gale without a rudder. They climbed too high. They reached the cold regions of the uttermost north. The serpent, Draco, which usually sleeps frozen around the North Pole, felt the heat. It woke up. It hissed. The great bear tried to dive into the ocean to cool off, but was forbidden. Then they plummeted. The horses saw the monsters. The scorpion. This was the terror of the sky. The constellation Scorpio, with its double pincers and its tail curved like a scythe, soaked in black venom. When Phaethon saw the beast, sweating black poison, curving its sting towards him, his courage shattered. He dropped the reins. The horses were free. Now, it was no longer a journey. It was an assault. The chariot became a weapon of mass destruction. The horses galloped wherever their fury took them. They crashed into the stars. They scraped the back of the moon, singeing her clouds. And then they turned their burning eyes toward the earth. They dived. The heat that hit the planet was not the warmth of summer. It was the heat of a supernova. The first things to burn were the mountains. Ida, covered in pine forests, burst into flame. Helicon, the home of the Muses, became a torch. Parnassus, with its twin peaks, glowed red. The snow on the Caucasus melted instantly, creating boiling floods that evaporated before they reached the valleys. The Alps turned black. The Apennines were scorched. Then the forests died. The moisture was sucked out of the trees, and they exploded. The crops turned to ash in the fields. The cities of men caught fire. Walls of stone cracked. Towers fell. Phaethon, clinging to the rail of the chariot, was wrapped in hot smoke. He could not see. He could only hear the screaming of the earth. The floor of the chariot was burning his feet. The air he breathed was fire. The destruction reached the rivers. The Eurotas boiled. The Euphrates, the Ganges, the Danube, they all began to steam. The gold-bearing Tagus melted its sands. The swans of the Cayster River were roasted in the water, and the Nile, the great river of Egypt, terrified by the approaching demon of fire, fled. It buried its head in the sands of the desert, hiding its source. To this day, the myth says, the source of the Nile remains hidden because of the terror of that day. The heat struck the people of Ethiopia. The blood in their veins boiled and rose to the surface, turning their skin black, a mark of the sun's proximity that they would bear forever. Libya became a desert, its moisture stolen, leaving only shifting sands. The ocean shrank. The sea receded, leaving a vast plain of dry salt. The dolphins dared not leap. The seals dived to the crushing depths. Even Nereus and Doris, the sea gods, hid in their caves, the water boiling around them. Finally, Gaia herself, the Earth Mother, could bear it no longer. Her skin was cracked. Her eyes were blinded by smoke. She covered her face with her hand and cried out to the king of the heavens. "Zeus!" she screamed, her voice choking with ash. "If this is your will, why are your thunderbolts idle? If I must die by fire, let it be your fire. The world is dying. The poles are smoking. Atlas can barely hold up the sky, for the axis is glowing white hot. If the sea perishes and the earth perishes, we return to chaos. Save what remains." Zeus, high on Olympus, heard the plea. He looked down. He saw the world wrapped in flame. He saw the chariot of the sun careening like a meteor. He looked for clouds to make rain, but the clouds were gone. He looked for his brother's storms, but the sea was dry. He had only one weapon left, the ultimate check and balance. Zeus climbed to the highest tower of heaven. He took a thunderbolt, one of the jagged three-forked bolts forged by the Cyclopes. He aimed. He did not aim at the horses. He aimed at the driver. "So falls the star," Zeus whispered. He threw the bolt. It flew across the sky, a streak of blue-white plasma that outshone the sun. It struck Phaethon in the chest. The impact was absolute. The boy was blasted from the chariot. His hair, already smoldering, caught fire. He fell. He fell like a shooting star, a long trail of fire marking his descent across the atmosphere. The horses, terrified by the thunder, broke their yoke. They scattered. The chariot shattered. Fragments of the divine machine, the axle, the spokes, the reins, fell like rain across the sky. But Phaethon fell further. He fell away from the world of the living. He fell into the river Eridanus, a mysterious river in the far west, perhaps the Po in Italy. The water hissed as it received his burning body. The river nymphs, the naiads, caught him. They washed the smoke from his face. They buried him on the bank. They carved an epitaph on his stone, a verse that echoes the tragedy of ambition. Here lies Phaethon, who drove his father's chariot. Great was his failure, but he fell daring greatly. The aftermath was a season of mourning. Helios, the father, was devastated. The myth tells us that for one whole day, the sun did not rise. The world was lit only by the fires of the burning forests. Helios sat in his palace, his head covered, refusing to work, refusing to look at the sky that had killed his son. He blamed Zeus. He blamed the horses. He blamed himself. But the grief of the sisters was even more profound. The Heliades, the daughters of Helios and Clymene, the sisters of Phaethon, came to the tomb. They wept. They beat their breasts. They stood on the bank of the river and refused to leave. Days passed. Months passed. Their feet began to root into the mud. Bark began to creep up their legs. Their arms turned into branches. Their hair turned into leaves. They were transforming. They were becoming the poplar trees that line the rivers. But they still cried, and as their tears fell, they hardened in the sun. They turned into drops of gold. They became amber. This is the mythological origin of amber. The tears of the sun's daughters, mourning the boy who tried to fly. There was also Cygnus, a king of Liguria and a cousin of Phaethon. He loved the boy so much that he abandoned his kingdom to weep by the river. His voice became shrill with grief. His neck extended. He grew white feathers. He became the swan, and to this day the swan loves the water, where Phaethon fell, and hates the fire. The world was saved, but it was scarred. The deserts remained. The blackened skin of the Ethiopians remained. The hidden head of the Nile remained. And in the heart of Helios, a bitterness took root. He returned to his duty eventually. Zeus argued with him, pleaded with him, and finally threatened him. "If you do not drive," Zeus said, "I will strike you with the bolt as well." Helios took the reins again. He caught the horses, who were trembling and scattered. He beat them. He whipped them with a fury he had never shown before. He whipped them for the death of his son. The order was restored. The sun rose. The seasons turned. But the relationship between the sun and the Olympians had shifted. Helios was no longer just the silent observer. He was a grieving father who held a grudge. He was a god who had learned that his power was both absolute and fragile. And as the years turned into centuries, this bitterness would manifest in a new way. Helios would become the ultimate enforcer of divine law. He would become the spy who ruined the happiness of others. He had lost his own joy. Why should he protect theirs? We have seen the sun burn the world. Now, we will see what happens when mortals dare to touch what belongs to the sun. We will see the cattle that never die, and the men who were foolish enough to eat them. The sky has cooled. The amber tears are drifting down the river Eridanus. But the eye is open again, and it is watching. The fire of Phaethon has been extinguished in the river Eridanus. The tears of the sisters have hardened into amber. The world has returned to its equilibrium. But the god of the sun has changed. The grief of a father has hardened into the cold, unblinking vigilance of a judge. We move now from the tragedy of the son to the terrifying authority of the father. We move to the era of the Watcher. In the vast, interconnected web of Greek mythology, Helios occupies a unique position. He is not merely a source of light. He is the cosmic panopticon. He is the surveillance state of the ancient world. Nothing happens on the face of the earth without his permission, and nothing is hidden from his gaze. This attribute, this all-seeing nature, makes him a dangerous enemy. And nowhere is this danger more palpable than in the story of a specific island, a specific herd of cattle, and a specific wanderer named Odysseus. We must cast our minds to the middle of the wine-dark sea, to the island of Thrinacia. Scholars and poets have long debated the location of this sacred isle. Some say it is Sicily, with its three corners, Trinacria. Others place it in the mystic west, near the lands of the setting sun. But wherever it lies, it is the private estate of Helios. It is his garden, and in this garden he keeps his most prized possessions. Not gold, not jewels, but cattle. The Odyssey in Book 12 gives us a precise, almost accounting-like description of these herds. There are 7 herds of oxen. There are 7 flocks of sheep. In each herd and in each flock there are 50 beasts. Do the math with me. 7 times 50 is 350. 350 cattle. 350 sheep. This is not a random number. In the ancient lunar calendars, the year was often calculated as 50 weeks of 7 days, or roughly 350 days and nights. The cattle of Helios are not just animals, they are the days of the year. They are time itself made flesh. They do not breed. They do not die. They do not age. They are the eternal, unchanging present. To harm one of them is not just theft. It is a crime against time. It is an attempt to shorten the year, to eat the days that belong to the god. Guarding these sacred beasts are two nymphs, daughters of Helios and Neaera. Their names are Phaethusa, the Shining One, and Lampetia, the Burning One. They are the shepherds of the sun, tasked with watching over the flock while their father is in the sky. Into this sacred, silent pasture sails the battered ship of Odysseus. He has been warned. The blind prophet Tiresias, in the land of the dead, told him, "Avoid the cattle." The witch Circe, in her island palace, told him, "If you hurt them, I prophesy the ruin of your ship and your men." Odysseus knows the danger. He wants to bypass the island entirely, but the gods are cruel, and the winds are contrary. A storm, sent perhaps by a vengeful Poseidon or merely by the capriciousness of the fates, traps them. They are forced to beach their ship in a cove on Thrinacia. At first, they are pious. They eat the food Circe gave them, red wine and bread. They look at the cattle grazing in the meadows, beautiful, white-skinned, with horns of gold, and they keep their distance. They know that these beasts belong to the sun. But the wind does not change. The south wind, the Notus, blows for a month. The bread runs out. The wine runs dry. The men begin to starve. They hunt for fish with bent hooks. They scour the shore for birds. Hunger, the most primal of urges, begins to erode their fear of the divine. And while Odysseus is away, praying to the gods in a sheltered spot, falling into a sleep sent by Athena, the mutiny begins. It is Eurylochus, the second in command, who speaks the fatal words. His speech is a masterpiece of desperate logic. "All deaths are hateful to wretched mortals," he says to the starving crew, "but to die of hunger is the most pitiful way to go. Come, let us drive off the best of the cattle and sacrifice them to the immortals. If we ever get home to Ithaca, we will build a rich temple to Helios Hyperion. But if he is angry about his cattle and wants to destroy our ship, well, I would rather gulp down the salt water and die once and for all than waste away slowly on a desert island." The men cheer. It is the logic of the belly. They drive the sacred cattle, the days of the year, around the altar. They have no barley to sprinkle, so they use oak leaves. They have no wine for the libation, so they use water. They slit the throats of the eternal beasts. And then the horror begins. Helios is not there physically. He is in the sky, or perhaps resting in the west. But his daughter, Lampetia of the long robes, sees the crime. She flies to the upper air. She carries the news to her father. "Father Helios," she cries, "they have killed your oxen. The son of Laertes and his men have slaughtered the ones you love to look at." Imagine the rage of the sun. This is not the grief of Phaethon. This is the fury of a property owner whose sanctuary has been violated. These cattle were his joy. The text says he rejoiced in them every morning as he rose and every evening as he set. They were his only comfort in his endless, lonely journey. Helios does not descend to fight the mortals. That is beneath him. He goes straight to the top. He goes to the council of Olympus. He stands before Zeus, the cloud gatherer, and he makes a threat that terrifies the entire pantheon. It is one of the most significant theological moments in Greek myth. Helios says, "Father Zeus, and you other blessed gods, punish the companions of Odysseus. They have insolently killed my cattle. If they do not pay me full atonement for the cattle." He pauses. The light of the world flickers. "Go down to Hades and shine among the dead." Let those words sink in. I will shine among the dead. Helios is threatening to invert the cosmos. If he goes to the underworld, the realm of Hades will become the realm of light, and the earth, the realm of the living, will be plunged into eternal frozen darkness. Life will end. The crops will die. The separation between the living and the dead will collapse. He is holding the entire biosphere hostage. Zeus, the king of gods, realizes he has no choice. He cannot lose the sun. The balance must be maintained. "Helios," Zeus replies, soothing the angry Titan. "Shine on for the immortals and for mortal men on the grain-giving earth. As for the ship, I will strike it with a white-hot thunderbolt and smash it into pieces in the middle of the wine-dark sea." Back on Thrinacia, the men of Odysseus are feasting, but the feast turns into a nightmare. The gods send signs to show their displeasure. The skins of the dead cattle begin to crawl along the ground like snakes. The meat on the spits, both raw and roasted, begins to bellow. The dead flesh is mooing. It is a scene of grotesque, supernatural horror. The men eat, but they are eating their own doom. For 6 days they feast on the stolen time. On the 7th day, the wind changes. They launch the ship. But the eye of Helios is watching. He has seen the departure. He signals to Zeus. A dark cloud gathers. The sky turns black. A true darkness, not just a storm. The west wind screams, snapping the forestays of the mast. The mast falls, crushing the skull of the helmsman. And then the bolt falls. Zeus strikes. The ship is filled with sulfur. The men are thrown into the sea. Homer describes them bobbing like sea crows around the black ship. There is no homecoming for them. They ate the sun's cattle, and the sun has taken their day of return. Only Odysseus, who did not eat, survives, clinging to a piece of wreckage, drifting back toward the monsters Scylla and Charybdis. This story defines Helios as the enforcer. He does not need to fight you. He simply withdraws his favor or calls upon the supreme executive power of the universe to erase you. But the cattle of Thrinacia were not the only things Helios watched. His eye was constantly roving, peering into the private lives of gods and men, and in the high courts of Olympus, he was known as the Great Spy. There is a famous story, sung by the bard Demodocus in the Hall of the Phaeacians, that illustrates this perfectly. It is the story of the golden net. Ares, the god of war, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, were having an affair. Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the lame smith god, but she preferred the brutal, handsome Ares. They thought they were clever. They met in the palace of Hephaestus while the smith was away at his forge in Lemnos. They met in secret, in the dark. But nothing is secret from Helios. As he drove his chariot over the palace, he looked down through the roof. He saw the lovers in the bed of his brother in craft, Hephaestus. Remember, Helios and Hephaestus are linked by fire. Helios did not gossip. He went straight to Hephaestus. He reported the crime with the detached precision of a surveillance camera. "Your wife is in your bed with Aeetes," he said. Hephaestus, fueled by the rage of the betrayed, went to his forge. He did not make a weapon to kill them. He made a trap. He forged chains of bronze so fine they were invisible to the eye, like spider webs, but stronger than adamantine. He draped these nets over the bedposts and the ceiling. Then he pretended to leave for Lemnos again. Ares saw him go. The war god crept into the palace. He took the goddess of love in his arms. They lay down. Snap. The net fell. The invisible bonds tightened. The two lovers were trapped, naked, unable to move a limb. They were frozen in their embrace. Hephaestus returned. He opened the doors. He called all the gods to come and see. "Father Zeus," he shouted, "come and see this laughable and intolerable sight." Poseidon came. Hermes came. Apollo came. They stood in the doorway and laughed, a laughter that shook the foundations of Olympus. They laughed at the god of war trapped by a smith. They joked about who would want to trade places with Ares. But Helios did not laugh. He did not even come to the door. He was already back in the sky. He had done his duty. He had exposed the truth. The shame of the lovers was his work. He is the light that disinfects the dark corners of desire. To the ancients, this was a warning. You can hide from your husband. You can hide from the laws of men, but you cannot hide from the sun. However, there is a third story of seeing that is far more somber. It is found in the Homeric hymn to Demeter. It is the story of the abduction of Persephone. When Hades, the lord of the dead, burst from the earth to snatch the maiden Persephone, the girl screamed. She cried out to her father, Zeus. But Zeus was far away. No one heard her, except two beings. Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, heard the scream from her cave, but she only heard the sound. She did not see the perpetrator. And Helios. Helios, from his bright station in the sky, saw the whole thing. He saw the earth open. He saw the black horses of the underworld. He saw the weeping girl dragged into the dark. Demeter, the mother, wandered the earth for 9 days with burning torches in her hands. She did not eat ambrosia. She did not bathe. She was wild with grief. She asked everyone, "Where is my daughter?" No one knew. The birds were silent. The trees whispered, but said nothing. Finally, on the 10th day, Hecate led Demeter to the sun. They stood before his chariot, perhaps at dawn, blocking his path. "Helios," Demeter cried, "be respectful to me, a goddess, if ever I have warmed your heart. I heard the voice of my daughter screaming as if she were being raped, but I did not see who did it. You look down from the bright ether upon all the earth and sea with your rays. Tell me truly, who stole her?" Helios looked at the grieving mother. He felt pity, a rare emotion for the watcher. But his pity was mixed with a brutal pragmatism. "Queen Demeter," Helios said, "daughter of Rhea of the beautiful hair, I will tell you the truth, for I respect you and pity you in your grief. No other of the immortals is to blame except Zeus himself." He dropped the bombshell. It was an inside job. the king had given the daughter to his brother. He gave her to Hades to be his blooming wife, Helios explained. Hades seized her and took her loudly in his chariot down to the misty darkness. But then Helios tried to comfort her, and his comfort reveals his alien, detached perspective. "But goddess," he said, "stop your great weeping. It does not fit you to have this insatiable anger in vain. Hades is not an unseemly son-in-law among the immortals. He is your own brother. He has the same blood. And as for honor, he has a third share of the world. He is a king. She will rule over the dead." After delivering this comfort, telling a mother that she should be happy her daughter is queen of the corpses, Helios whipped his horses. He shouted to his horses, the hymn says, and they, like long-winged birds, swiftly drew the swift chariot. He left. He drove on. He had given the information. The emotional fallout was not his problem. This interaction encapsulates the tragedy of Helios. He sees the pain of the world, the abduction of daughters, the adultery of wives, the slaughter of cattle, the fall of sons. He sees it all with absolute clarity. But he cannot stop. He cannot intervene to change the heart of Zeus or Hades. He is the reporter, not the editor. This burden of sight, this accumulation of the world's sins and sorrows witnessed from the chariot, perhaps explains why the lineage of Helios becomes darker as the ages pass. The light that reveals the truth can also become the light that burns. And this leads us to the dark progeny. Helios is not just the father of the failed Phaethon or the murdered Helios. He is the progenitor of the most powerful witches in mythology. His blood, mixed with the waters of the Oceanids, produces something volatile. Why are the children of the sun associated with magic, poison, and pharmaca? Perhaps because the sun brings up the herbs from the earth, both the healing balm and the deadly hemlock. Perhaps because the sun knows the secrets of nature that remain hidden in the dark. As we leave the weeping Demeter and the laughing gods of Olympus, we must turn our eyes to the east again, to the land of Colchis, to the island of Aeetes. We must meet the women who carry the fire of Helios in their veins. We must meet Circe. We must meet Pasiphae. We must meet Medea. The golden eye has seen the crimes of the gods. Now, let us see the crimes of his children. The age of the sorcerers is beginning. The chariot flies on, but the shadow it casts is growing longer. And in that shadow, the cauldron is bubbling. The chariot of the sun is a vehicle of absolute order. It moves with mathematical precision, dividing the day from the night, the season of sowing from the season of harvest. But there is a paradox at the heart of the solar myth. While the father is the guardian of cosmic law, the children are the agents of chaos. While the father reveals the truth, the children weave illusions. We enter now into the strange and terrifying genealogy of the sun. We must ask ourselves, why does the god of light father witches? Why is the blood of Hyperion the primary ingredient in the history of sorcery? The answer lies in the nature of the sun itself. Helios is not just the lamp of the sky. He is the heater of the earth. His rays penetrate the soil, encouraging the growth of all things. He nurtures the wheat that feeds the city, yes, but he also nurtures the hemlock that stops the heart. He grows the poppy that brings sleep and madness. He grows the mandrake that screams when pulled from the ground. The sun is the ultimate pharmakeus, the master of drugs. He knows the secret properties of every leaf, every root, and every flower, because he watched them grow from the moment they broke the soil. And he passed this knowledge, this pharmaca, to his daughters. The most famous of these is Circe. The Odyssey calls her a dread goddess with human speech. She lives on the island of Aeetes, a place that floats on the edge of the known world, perhaps in the mystic west, near the setting point of her father. She is the daughter of Helios and Perse, an Oceanid. Imagine her. She is not the hag of medieval folklore. She is radiantly beautiful, with the burning, golden eyes of her father. She sits at a great loom, weaving a web that is immortal and fine. But around her house, there are no guard dogs. There are wolves. There are lions. They do not attack. They fawn. They wag their tails like domestic pets. These are not animals. They are men. Circe possesses the power of metamorphosis. She can take the ontos, the being of a man, and twist it. She serves a mixture of Pramnian wine, cheese, barley, and pale honey. But into this mixture, she sprinkles baneful drugs, the drugs of Helios. When the men of Odysseus drink, they forget their fatherland. They forget their names. And with a tap of her wand, they become swine. They grunt. They grow bristles. They grovel in the mud. But, and this is the true horror, their minds remain human. They are trapped in the bodies of beasts, fully aware of their degradation. Why does she do this? Is it cruelty? Or is it a form of revelation? Her father, Helios, reveals the physical world. Circe reveals the inner nature. If a man is greedy like a pig, she makes him a pig. If he is predatory like a lion, she makes him a lion. She is the dark mirror of the sun. But her relationship with Helios is complex. In the ancient Telegony, a lost epic, and later in Roman sources, we learn that Helios often visited her island. He would pause his chariot, or perhaps send rays down to converse with her. When Odysseus eventually leaves her island, she tells him how to navigate the underworld. Who taught her the paths of the dead? Her father, who travels beneath the earth every night in his golden cup. Circe is the aunt, but her brother is equally terrifying. He is Aeetes, the king of Colchis. If Circe represents the magical seductive aspect of the sun, Aeetes represents its tyranny. He ruled on the far eastern edge of the Black Sea, in the land where the sun rises. He was the keeper of the Golden Fleece. This fleece was not just a treasure. It was a solar totem. It was the skin of a ram sent by Hermes, made of pure gold, the metal of Helios. It hung in a sacred grove of Ares, guarded by a sleepless dragon. Aeetes was described by Apollonius Rhodius in the Argonautica not as a man, but as a force of nature. His voice was like a grinding stone. His anger was like a heat wave. When Jason and the Argonauts arrived to claim the fleece, Aeetes did not greet them with hospitality. He greeted them with a test of death. "You want the fleece?" Aeetes asked. "Then do what I do. I have 2 bulls with bronze feet that breathe fire. Yoke them. Plow the field of Ares. Sow the teeth of a dragon. Fight the army of skeletons that springs up. Notice the imagery. bronze-footed bulls breathing fire. This is a direct echo of the sun's own chariot horses. Aeetes is mimicking his father. He is trying to be the Sun King on Earth. But where Helios brings life, Aeetes brings death. He is the sun as a weapon of war. But the tragedy of Aeetes is that he is betrayed by his own blood, by his daughter, Medea. Medea is the granddaughter of Helios, and she is, without a doubt, the most dangerous woman in all of Greek mythology. She combines the sorcery of her aunt Circe with the ruthlessness of her father Aeetes. She falls in love with Jason, struck by an arrow from Eros, and she uses her magic to help him. She gives him an ointment, the Promethean charm, made from a flower that grew where the blood of Prometheus dripped onto the Caucasus Mountains. This ointment protects Jason from the fire of the bulls. It is fire against fire. The magic of the granddaughter neutralizes the beasts of the father. But the betrayal goes deeper. When Jason steals the fleece and flees, Aeetes pursues them. He launches his fleet. His rage is so great it boils the sea. To stop him, Medea does the unthinkable. She has taken her younger brother, Apsyrtus, on the ship with her. She kills him. She does not just kill him, she dismembers him. She cuts her brother into pieces and throws them into the sea, one by one. She knows that Aeetes, as a father, will stop to collect the pieces of his son to give them a proper burial. It works. Aeetes stops. The Argo escapes. Helios sees this. The all-seeing eye watches his granddaughter butcher his grandson to save a stranger. Does he strike her down? Does he blast the Argo with a bolt of heat? No. And this is the most disturbing part of the Medea myth. Helios does not punish Medea. He protects her. Years later, in Corinth, the tragedy reaches its climax. Jason has abandoned Medea for a younger princess. Medea, in a fury that shakes the pillars of the sky, decides to kill everyone Jason loves. She kills the princess with a poisoned robe, a robe that burns like the sun. She kills the king, and then, to hurt Jason most of all, she kills her own children, the great-grandsons of the sun. She stands on the roof of the palace, her hands dripping with blood. Jason is below, pounding on the doors, screaming for vengeance. He wants to tear her apart. The mob wants to stone her. There is no escape. She is trapped. Then the sky opens. A chariot descends. It is not a normal chariot. It is drawn by dragons, serpents with wings. It is the chariot of Helios. Euripides, in his play Medea, gives us this chilling ending. Medea steps into the chariot. She holds the bodies of her dead children. She looks down at Jason and says, "My grandfather, the sun, gave me this chariot to save me from the hand of my enemies." Helios sends his own vehicle to rescue the child killer. Why? Because she is of his blood. The morality of Olympus, the laws of Zeus, the sanctity of marriage, means nothing to the Titan. Blood is thicker than water, and fire is thicker than blood. He saves her because she is a creature of the sun, and the sun burns away all human judgment. She flies away to Athens, untouchable, wrapped in the protection of the solar disk. But if Medea is the triumph of the solar blood, there is another daughter who represents its shame, Pasiphae. She was another daughter of Helios and Circe, the sister of Circe and Aeetes. She was married to King Minos of Crete. She lived in the great palace of Knossos, a place of labyrinthine corridors and bull-leaping rituals. Pasiphae was proud. She boasted of her lineage. She claimed that she shone brighter than the other goddesses. This hubris attracted the attention of the Olympians. Poseidon, the sea god, or perhaps Aphrodite, decided to punish the sun's daughter. They did not strike her with a disease. They struck her with a lust so unnatural, it became the most infamous scandal of the ancient world. They made her fall in love with a bull. It was the Cretan bull, a magnificent white beast that had risen from the sea. Pasiphae, the daughter of the all-seeing sun, burned with the desire for an animal. She watched it graze. She longed for it. The text says she hated the beautiful cows because the bull loved them. But how could a woman mate with a bull? She needed help. She went to Daedalus, the great artificer who was living in exile at Knossos. Daedalus, the master craftsman, built a machine. He built a hollow wooden cow. He covered it with the hide of a real cow. He put it on wheels and rolled it into the meadow. Pasiphae climbed inside. Think of the irony. The daughter of Helios, who drives the chariot that illuminates the entire world, is forced to hide in the dark belly of a fake animal to satisfy a cursed desire. She, whose father reveals all secrets, must become a secret. The bull was deceived. The union happened. And from this union, a child was born. He had the body of a man, but the head of a bull. He was a monster, a hybrid of the divine solar blood and the bestial earth. His mother named him Asterion, the starry one. We know him as the Minotaur. When Minos saw the child, he knew the shame was too great to be seen. The sun's grandson could not walk in the daylight. He commissioned Daedalus to build a prison, the labyrinth. It was a maze so complex that once you entered, you could never find the exit. It was the anti-sky. The sky is open, visible, navigable. The labyrinth is closed, dark, confusing. The Minotaur was thrown into the center, into the absolute dark. Helios looked down at Crete. He saw his grandson, the starry one, trapped in the dark, eating human flesh. He saw the perversion of his lineage. This is the curse of the sun. To be so high, so bright, so powerful, that when your children fall, they fall into the deepest pits of depravity. The excess of energy creates an excess of passion, the mania of the sun. But the story of the lineage does not end with the monsters. It circles back to the light. After the tragedies of Medea and Pasiphae, there is a quieter, sadder story of love and transformation. It is the story of the women who loved the sun too much. Helios was a god of many lovers. He shone on everyone. But this universality is painful for those who want to possess him solely. There was a nymph named Clete. She was an Oceanide, like Clymene. She loved Helios with a desperate, consuming passion. But Helios had tired of her. His wandering eye had fallen on a Persian princess named Leucotho. Leucothoi was the daughter of Orchamus, a king of Persia. She was kept in a deep chamber, hidden from the eyes of men. But the sun can enter any room. One night, Helios waited until his mother Eurynome had put the world to sleep. He entered the chamber of the princess. But he did not come as a burning fire. He took the form of her mother. He dismissed the servants, and then he revealed his true glory. Leucotho, dazzled and overwhelmed, surrendered to the god. Clytie saw this. Jealousy, the green-eyed monster, consumed her. She wanted to hurt Helios by destroying what he loved. She went to the king, Orchamus. She told him, "Your daughter has lost her virtue. She lies with the sun." The king was a brutal man. He did not believe in divine lovers. He believed in shame. He ordered a pit to be dug. He threw his daughter, Leucotho, into the earth, and he buried her alive. He piled the heavy sand on top of her. Helios, from his high station, saw it happen. He saw the light of his lover extinguished by the earth. He drove his chariot down. He tried to warm the ground. He tried to use his rays to dig her out. But he was too late. The weight of the earth had crushed her breath. The sun cannot raise the dead. He can only illuminate them. In his grief, Helios sprinkled nectar on her body and on the sand. "You shall still reach the sky," he promised. From the body of the dead girl, a shoot appeared. A tree grew. It was the frankincense tree, the tree that bleeds aromatic resin, the resin that is burned in every temple in the ancient world. When we smell incense rising to the heavens, we are smelling the memory of Leucotho, rising back to her lover. And what of Clytie, the informer? Helios turned his back on her. He despised her cruelty. He never looked at her again. Clytie stripped herself. She sat on the bare ground. She did not eat. She did not drink. For 9 days and 9 nights, she did nothing but watch the sky. When Helios rose in the east, she turned her head. When he climbed the zenith, she looked up. When he set in the west, she wept. She turned and turned and turned. Her limbs rooted in the soil. Her face became a flower. She became the heliotrope, or, in later traditions, the sunflower. The flower that is condemned to always look at the sun, but never be noticed by him. It is the symbol of unrequited, obsessive love. The flower that twists its neck until it breaks, just to catch one glimpse of the passing chariot. These are the children and the lovers of the sun. Witches, monsters, trees, and flowers. A lineage of transformation. It tells us that the sun is not a safe deity. It is a force of radioactive power. It changes things. It accelerates growth, but it also accelerates decay. It brings out the hidden potential in all things, whether that potential is to be a tree of holy incense or a bull-headed monster. But the story of Helios is not just about his family. It is about his role in the cosmos. He is a titan who survived the Titanomachy. He is a god who bridges the gap between the old order and the new. And there was one moment, one terrifying moment in the history of the gods, when the rule of Zeus was threatened not by a boy in a chariot, but by an army of giants rising from the earth, the Gigantomachy. And in this war, the Olympians found that they could not win without the help of the Watcher. The prophecy said that the giants could not be killed by gods alone. They needed the help of a mortal, Heracles. But they also needed something else. Gaia, the Earth Mother, was brewing a pharmacon, a drug that would make her children, the giants, invincible. If they ate this herb, they could not be killed. Zeus needed to find this herb before the giants did. But how do you find a small plant in the vastness of the earth in the dark? You stop the light. Zeus sent a command to Helios, "Do not shine." He ordered the moon, Selene, and the dawn, Eos, to stay in their houses. For a period of time, the universe was plunged into absolute darkness. This was the strategic blackout of the gods. In the dark, Zeus groped for the herb. He found it. He destroyed it. And then the command came. Light. Helios ascended. But the battle was raging. The giants were piling mountains on top of mountains. They were throwing oaks at the sky. Helios did not just watch this war. He fought. On the friezes of the great altar of Pergamon, we see him. He is driving his chariot into the fray. He is not fighting with a sword. He is fighting with the sheer intensity of his presence. He is blasting the giants with radiation. And in one crucial moment, he saves his brother in fire, Hephaestus. The smith god, exhausted, is surrounded. Helios swoops down. He pulls the smith onto his chariot. The fire of the earth, the volcano, is rescued by the fire of the sky, the sun. This moment cements his place. He is a titan, yes, but he is our titan. He is the essential ally of civilization against the chaotic forces of the earthborn. As the smoke of the Gigantomachy clears, and the monsters of Crete and Colchis fade into legend, the worship of Helios begins to change. He is no longer just a character in a story. He becomes a symbol of empire. He becomes the Colossus. We are approaching the end of our journey. We are returning to Rhodes, but not the roads of the myths, the roads of history, the roads of the great siege, and the bronze giant that stood astride the harbor. We are moving from the age of magic to the age of metal and memory. The sun is setting on the mythological era, but it is rising on the cult of the invincible sun. Let us go to the harbor. Let us watch the bronze being cast. Let us see how men tried to build a god that would last forever. The chariot of the sun does not stop for grief. It does not stop for the crimes of Medea or the monsters of Crete. It rolls on, an eternal machine of light. But the driver of the chariot is not a machine. He is a god of profound, often volatile emotions. And while we have seen his anger burn the world, and his indifference allow the abduction of Pasiphae, we must now look at his heart. We must look at the loves of the sun. Love, for a deity of pure energy, is a dangerous proposition. The sun warms the earth from a distance, and life flourishes. But if the sun comes too close, if it touches the object of its desire, the result is often incineration or transformation. The loves of Helios are stories of boundaries being crossed. They are stories of the high descending to the low, and the catastrophic changes that occur when the divine fire tries to hold a mortal form. We turn our gaze now to the scented lands of the East, to the ancient kingdom of Persia, ruled by the stern King Orchamus. This is the setting for one of the most poignant tragedies in Ovid's Metamorphoses. It is a story that explains the origin of the sacred incense that burns in every temple of the ancient world. It is the story of Leucothoi. Helios, the all-seeing, had many lovers. He had the Oceanid Circe, the mother of witches. He had Clymene, the mother of the fallen boy. But his eye, forever roving over the cities of men, fell upon Leucothoe. She was a princess of unsurpassed beauty, kept in seclusion by her father, within the women's chambers of the palace. The text tells us that her beauty surpassed even that of her mother, Eurynome, who was considered the fairest woman in the Orient. Helios was captivated. The poet Ovid describes the god's distraction with wonderful irony. He tells us that the god who regulates the light of the world began to rise a little earlier than usual in the east, just to see her. He began to set a little later in the west, prolonging the day so he could linger over her palace. The winter days became longer, confusing the farmers, simply because the sun could not bear to look away. Sometimes his light would dim, not because of a cloud or an eclipse, but because his mind was clouded with desire. But looking was not enough. The watcher wanted to touch. One night, the Titan decided to descend, but he could not enter the chamber of a virgin princess in his true form. If he walked in as the blazing Hyperion, the palace would melt, and the girl would be ash. He needed a disguise. He needed a form that would grant him access and trust. He chose the form of her mother. Helios transformed his terrifying golden aura into the soft, wrinkled features of Queen Eurynome. He adopted her walk, her voice, her gray hair. He entered the chamber where Leucothoi was spinning fine wool with her 12 handmaidens. In the guise of the mother, he kissed the daughter. "A private word with you, my child," he whispered. "I have matters to discuss that are for your ears alone." The handmaidens, obedient to their queen, withdrew. The room was silent. The heavy curtains were drawn. Then the transformation happened. It was not a violent explosion, but a revelation. The gray hair faded into gold. The wrinkles smoothed into the perfection of immortality. The mother vanished, and in her place stood the god. He did not shine with his full, blinding intensity. That would be fatal. But he shone with the moderate luster of a lover. Leucotho was terrified. She dropped her spindle, but she was also overwhelmed. The presence of the divine is a drug. It commands submission. She did not scream. She accepted the god. The union took place in the quiet of the Persian night. But there was a witness. Not a mortal witness, but a divine one. And this brings us to the dark twin of this love story, Clytie. Clytie was an Oceanide, a nymph of the sea. She had been Helios's lover before. She had given him her heart, her body, and her devotion. But Helios had moved on. The sun moves. It never stays in one house of the zodiac for long. He had left her for the fresh beauty of the Persian princess. Clytie's love turned into something hard and sharp. It became the zelos, jealousy. It is the same emotion that drove the brothers of Teenages to murder, and the same emotion that drove Medea to kill her children. It is the shadow side of the solar fire. She could not hurt the god. He was too high, too powerful. So she decided to hurt the girl. Clytie knew the strict laws of the Persian court. She knew that a princess who lost her virtue was subject to death. She went to the king, Orchamus. She whispered the secret in his ear. She did not say, "A god visited her." She said, "Your daughter has violated her vows. She has taken a lover." Orchamus was a man of stone. He did not ask for explanations. He did not listen to his daughter's pleas. When Leucotho raised her arms to the sun, crying out, "It was the god! It was the sun himself who forced me!" The king did not believe her. Or Perhaps he did not care. Honor was more important than truth. He ordered a pit to be dug, a deep, dark grave in the sandy soil. He threw his daughter into it. And then, while she was still breathing, still crying out the name of her lover, he piled the heavy earth on top of her. He buried her alive. He suffocated the light. Helios saw it. The all-seeing eye saw the mound of earth rising over the face of the girl he loved. The myth says he was seized with a grief as sharp as the one he felt for Phaethon. He drove his chariot down. He focused his rays on the grave. He tried to melt the earth. He tried to warm her cold body back to life. But the weight was too great. The suffocation was absolute. A god can do many things, but he cannot reverse death once the breath has left the lungs. Leucothoe was gone, but Helios could not leave her to rot. If he could not give her back her life, he would give her a new form. He took nectar, the drink of the gods, and sprinkled it over the mound of earth and the body beneath it. "You shall still touch the sky," he promised. The nectar soaked into the soil. It reached the body of the princess. It mingled with her blood and the decay. And a miracle occurred. The earth cracked. A shoot appeared. It grew rapidly, unfolding leaves that smelled of heaven. It was the frankincense tree. This transformation is profound. Leucothoe was buried in the dark, but she rose as a scent. When frankincense is burned, it releases a white, fragrant smoke that rises straight up to the sky. It is the only substance that, when destroyed by fire, becomes more beautiful. Every time a priest in antiquity lit incense on an altar, he was reenacting the resurrection of Leucothoe. He was sending her back to Helios. The smoke is her spirit, finally free of the heavy earth, rising to kiss the face of the sun. But the story has a final, bitter twisting. What of Clytie, the informer, the jealous ex-lover? She thought that by removing the rival, she would win back the god. She was wrong. Helios knew what she had done. He despised her cruelty. He withdrew his light from her entirely. He refused to visit her. He refused to look at her. Clytie was destroyed by her own victory. She stripped off her robes. She sat down on the bare ground, on a rocky outcrop. She refused food. She refused water. She refused the company of her sister nymphs. For 9 days and 9 nights she sat there. She did only one thing. She watched the sky. When the sun rose in the east, she turned her head to the east. When he climbed to the zenith, she tilted her neck back. When he set in the west, she turned to the west. She followed his movement with a desperate, starving obsession. She drank nothing but her own tears and the cold dew of the night. Her limbs began to stiffen. Her feet rooted into the rock. Her skin turned green. Her face, pale with hunger and red with weeping, became a flower. She became the heliotrope. In modern times, we often imagine this as the sunflower, which is actually a plant from the Americas, unknown to the Greeks. But the ancient heliotrope, or turnsole, was a smaller, violet or yellow flower that turns its head to follow the sun. It is a myth of biology. It explains the phenomenon of phototropism, the movement of plants toward light. But in the mythological mind, it is not a biological mechanism. It is an eternal penance. Clytie is still there, in every field, twisting her neck, begging for a glance from the lover who will never forgive her. These stories of love and transformation show us the personal, emotional life of the Titan. But Helios was not just a lover. He was a cosmic powerhouse. And there came a time when his power was needed not for romance, but for war. We must shift our focus now from the intimate chambers of Persia to the battlefields of Phlegra. We must speak of the Gigantomachy. The War of the Giants was the greatest threat to the Olympian order. The giants, gigantes, were not just big men. They were chthonic monsters, born of Gaia's anger. They had snakes for legs. They were immune to the weapons of the gods, unless, and this was the prophecy, a mortal helped the gods. Gaia, the Earth Mother, wanted her children to win. She knew they were vulnerable to mortals, so she sought a specific herb, a magical plant, a pharmacon that grew in the secret places of the earth. If the giants ate this herb, they would become truly immortal. They could not be killed by god or man. Zeus learned of this plan. He knew he had to find the herb first. But how do you find a small plant in the vast forests and caves of the world before the Earth Mother herself finds it? You turn off the lights. Zeus issued a command that had never been given before and would never be given again. He commanded Helios to stop. "Do not yoke your horses," Zeus ordered. "Do not rise." He gave the same order to Selene, the moon, and Eos, the dawn. For a period of time, we do not know how long, perhaps days, perhaps weeks, the universe was plunged into absolute supernatural darkness. This was the strategic eclipse. In this darkness, the giants were confused. The plants did not grow. The world was suspended in a terrified silence. But Zeus, guided by his own lightning, or perhaps by the gray-eyed Athena, groped through the dark earth. He found the herb. He tore it up. He destroyed it. The possibility of giant immortality was gone. Then the command came. "Let there be light." Helios ascended. But he did not just return to the sky to watch. He joined the fight. The Gigantomachy was a chaotic, brutal war. The giants were piling mountains on top of mountains, Pelion on Ossa, trying to storm the gates of heaven. They were throwing burning oak trees like javelins. On the great frieze of the Pergamon altar, one of the masterpieces of Hellenistic art, we see the role of Helios. He is not in the background. He is in the thick of the slaughter. He is depicted driving his quadriga, his 4 horses rearing up, trampling the snake-legged giants. He is glowing with a combat fury. He is using the light itself as a weapon. We must understand that for a creature of darkness, like a giant, the focused beam of the sun is a physical blow. It burns. It blinds. It disorients. Helios was the artillery of Olympus. He provided the cover fire, while Heracles shot his arrows and Zeus threw his bolts. And there is a specific moment, preserved on ancient vases, that shows the deep alliance between Helios and the other gods of fire. During the battle, Hephaestus, the smith god, was cornered. He was exhausted. He had been fighting with his hammers and his molten metal, but the giants were overwhelming him. He fell. Suddenly, the sky screamed. Helios dived. He brought his chariot down to the very surface of the earth, a maneuver he had forbidden Phaethon to try. He swept low. He reached out his hand. He pulled Hephaestus into the chariot. It is a powerful image, the fire of the sky rescuing the fire of the earth. the refined golden flame saving the rough volcanic flame. It shows that despite his Titan lineage, despite his separate residence on the Oceanus, Helios was fully committed to the order of Zeus. He was the chaotic neutral who chose the side of the law. He also fought a giant named Clytius, a name ironically similar to his jealous lover. Hecate killed Clytius with her torches, but it was likely Helios who weakened him, burning away his defenses so the witch goddess could strike the final blow. The war ended. The giants were buried under volcanoes. The order of the cosmos was secured, and Helios returned to his station. His honor increased. He was no longer just the survivor of the old Titan regime. He was the savior of the new Olympian regime. But as the mythological age began to wane and the age of history began to rise, the perception of Helios shifted again. He became less of a character in a drama and more of a symbol of abstract power. The Greeks, especially in the Hellenistic period, began to see him as the king of the universe. The philosophers began to equate him with the concept of the good or the one. And nowhere was this shift more visible than on his sacred island of Rhodes. The people of Rhodes had survived sieges. They had survived earthquakes. They had become a maritime superpower, and they decided to build a monument that would express their gratitude to the Watcher. They did not want a normal statue. They wanted something that defied the limits of engineering, just as the sun defies the limits of the sky. We are moving now to the final chapter of our saga. We are leaving the battlefields of Phlegra and the pits of Persia. We are returning to the harbor of Rhodes. The year is 305 BC. The dust of a great siege is settling. The melted bronze of the enemy's war machines is being gathered. A sculptor named Chariot of Lindos is sketching a design in the dust. He is dreaming of a giant. We are about to build the Colossus. The sun is setting on the age of myth, but it is rising on the age of wonders. The god is about to become an icon. And even when the bronze falls, the idea will remain standing. Let us walk to the water's edge. Let us watch the casting of the face that watched the world. The fires of the Gigantomachy have cooled. The loves and tragedies of the Titan have faded into the mists of legend. But the sun does not vanish just because the stories end. In fact, as the ancient world moved from the age of myth into the age of history, the presence of Helios became more tangible, more physical, and more political than ever before. He ceased to be merely a character in a poem and became the architectural and spiritual center of a civilization. We return for the final time to the sacred island, to Rhodes. But this is not the Rhodes of the nymph Rhodos or the magical Telchines. This is the Rhodes of 305 BC. It is a city of marble and commerce, a naval superpower that controls the trade routes of the Mediterranean. It is rich, proud, and free. But freedom has a price. In the chaotic wars that followed the death of Alexander the Great, Rhodes tried to remain neutral. But neutrality is dangerous when giants are fighting. Antigonus I, Monophthalmus, one of Alexander's generals, wanted the island's fleet. When Rhodes refused, Antigonus sent his son. His name was Demetrius. History calls him Poliorcetes, the besieger of cities. He arrived with a fleet of 200 warships and 170 transport vessels. He brought an army of 40,000 men, more than the entire population of the city. He brought a terrifying machine of war, the Helepolis, the city taker. It was a siege tower 9 stories high, plated in iron, filled with catapults and ballistas, pushed by 3,400 men. It was a monster of engineering designed to crush the walls of the Sun City. The people of Rhodes were trapped. They looked at the iron monster approaching their gates. They looked at the sea filled with enemy sails. They had no allies coming. They had only one hope. They turned to the sky. They went to the temples of Helios. They swore a great oath. "If you save us," they prayed, "if you break the siege and drive the besieger away, we will build you a statue. Not a normal statue. We will build a colossus. We will make you the tallest thing on earth, just as you are the highest god in heaven." The siege lasted a year. It was brutal. The Helepolis battered the walls. Fires raged, but the Rhodians held. They fought with the desperation of men protecting their families, and with the fanaticism of men protecting their god. And then a miracle happened, or perhaps just a shift in the winds of politics. Demetrius was called away to fight elsewhere. He abandoned the siege. He left in such a hurry that he left behind his great war machines. He left the Helepolis, the Iron Tower, standing there like a dead giant. The city was saved. The promise had to be kept. The Rhodians gathered the debris of the war. They took the bronze plates from the siege towers. They melted down the enemy's weapons. They sold the equipment for 300 talents of silver. They called for a sculptor. His name was Chariot of Lindos. He was a student of Lysippos, the favorite artist of Alexander. Chariot was given a task that seemed impossible: build a god that touches the sky. It took 12 years. Rose, Chairs ordered mounds of earth to be buried as it grew. As the bronze legs rose, Chairs ordered mounds of earth to be piled around them, creating a ramp. The workmen climbed the ramp to cast the next section. The god grew out of a man-made hill, hidden until the very end. When it was finished, and the earth was cleared away, the world gasped. The Colossus of Rhodes stood 70 cubits high. That is roughly 33 meters, or 108 feet. It was the height of a modern 12-story building. Contrary to the medieval drawings you might have seen, it did not span the harbor entrance with its legs apart. That is a physical impossibility. The bronze would have collapsed under its own weight. No, it stood on a pedestal near the Mandrake harbor. It was a nude figure of Helios, radiant and muscular. He wore a crown of solar rays. He held a torch, or perhaps a spear, in one hand, shielding his eyes with the other as he looked out over the sea he had conquered. It was a masterpiece of bronze skin over an iron skeleton and a stone heart. It shone so brightly in the sun that ships could see it from miles away. It was a lighthouse of divinity. For 56 years, the Colossus stood. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Pilgrims came from Egypt, from Rome, from Persia, just to stand in its shadow. But the earth of the Aegean is unstable. The same geological forces that raised the island eventually shook it. In 226 BC, a massive earthquake struck Rhodes. The city walls cracked, the houses fell, and the Colossus, the giant, buckled at the knees, the weak point of the anatomy. With a sound like a thunderclap that rivaled Zeus, the bronze god fell. He crashed onto the land, crushing houses, snapping into pieces. The king of Egypt, Ptolemy III, offered to pay for its reconstruction. He sent money, bronze, and engineers. But the Rhodians were afraid. They consulted the oracle of Delphi. The oracle spoke, "Do not move the good. Do not raise what has fallen." They believed that perhaps the statue had been too big, that it had offended Helios by trying to mimic his scale. So they left it there. For 800 years, the ruins of the Colossus lay on the ground. Pliny the Elder, the Roman naturalist, visited the site in the 1st century AD. His description gives us a sense of the scale. "Even as it lies," he wrote, "it excites our wonder and admiration. Few men can clasp the thumb in their arms, and its fingers are larger than most statues. Where the limbs are broken asunder, vast caverns are seen yawning in the interior. Within it, too, are to be seen large masses of rock, by the weight of which the artist steadied it while erecting it." Think of that image, walking through the shattered fingers of a god, climbing into the cavern of his broken chest. It was a memento mori for a deity. Eventually, in 654 AD, the end came. The Arab forces of Muawiyah I captured Rhodes. They sold the remains of the Colossus to a Jewish merchant from Edessa. The text tells us that the merchant broke the bronze into scrap and loaded it onto 900 camels. The god who drove the chariot of the sky was carried away, piece by piece, on the backs of beasts of burden, to be melted down into coins and tools. But while the statue fell, the cult of Helios persisted. It evolved. It merged with other forces. In the early Greek myths, Helios and Apollo were distinct. Apollo was the god of light, yes, but the light of the mind, the light of prophecy, music, and reason. Helios was the physical orb, the fusion engine. But, as the centuries passed, the lines blurred. The poets began to call Apollo Phoebus, the shining one. They began to give Apollo the chariot. By the time of the Romans, the syncretism was almost complete. The intellect of Apollo merged with the power of Helios to create a super deity, Phoebus Apollo. But the Romans, with their love for power and empire, took it a step further. They were not content with a poetic god. They wanted a political god. In the late Roman Empire, as the old pantheon began to crumble and Christianity began to rise, the emperors looked for a unifying symbol, something that everyone, from the soldier in Syria to the farmer in Britain, could worship. They found Sol, Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. This was not exactly the Greek Helios. It was a harder, more martial deity, influenced by the Persian god Mithras. Mithras was the god of contracts and soldiers, often depicted dining with Sol. In 274 AD, the Emperor Aurelian established the cult of Sol Invictus as an official state religion. He built a massive temple in Rome. He put the radiant crown of Helios on his own head on the coins. He declared that the emperor was the earthly representative of the sun. Why? Because the sun is monarchical. There is only one sun in the sky. It rules alone. It is the perfect metaphor for an emperor. One God in heaven, one emperor on earth. The festival of Sol Invictus was celebrated on December 25th, the Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun. It was the day after the winter solstice, the moment when the sun begins to grow stronger again, proving that the darkness cannot win. It is no coincidence that when Christianity finally took over the empire, it adopted this date for the birth of its own light of the world. The iconography of Helios, the halo of rays around the head, the chariot riding across the sky, was absorbed into Christian art. When you see a mosaic of Christ with a golden nimbus behind his head, you are looking at the shadow of Helios. But there was one last desperate attempt to save the old Titan, one last flare of the pagan sun before the long twilight of the Middle Ages. It came from a man named Julian. Julian was the nephew of Constantine the Great, the first Christian emperor. But Julian was a secret lover of the old gods. He studied in Athens. He read Homer. He felt the power of the sun. When he became emperor in 361 AD, he tried to turn back the clock. History calls him Julian the Apostate. He tried to restore the temples. He tried to bring back the sacrifices. And he wrote a hymn to King Helios. It is a deeply philosophical, almost mystical text. In it, Julian argues that Helios is not just a physical star. He is the visible manifestation of the intelligible creator. He is the mediator between the world of pure thought and the world of matter. The sun, Julian wrote, is the common father of all mankind. He distributes his rays, which are the essence of his intellect, to all souls. Julian believed that by looking at the sun, we are looking at the face of God. He prayed to Helios to save the Roman Empire from decay. But Julian died. He was killed in battle against the Persians, struck by a spear in the gut. Legend says his last words were, "You have won, Galilean." With his death, the fire of Helios was finally extinguished as a state religion. The temples were closed. The fire on the altars of Rhodes went out. The statue was scrap metal. The Titan who had watched the birth of the gods, who had fought the giants, who had grieved for Phaethon, was now alone in the sky. But was he truly gone? Look at your calendar. Look at the days of the week. Sunday. Every week, the entire world still pays homage to the first day, the day of light. Look at the periodic table. Element number 2. The noble gas that powers the stars, named after the god who burns without being consumed. Look at the flowers in the field, the sunflower, the heliotrope turning their heads. Look at the horse chestnuts, the poplars, the amber on the beach. Helios did not die. He merely changed his form again. He became language. He became science. He became time. As we stand here, at the end of our long journey, the sun is beginning to set in the west. The sky is turning that familiar, bruising purple. The shadows are lengthening. Imagine the chariot one last time. The horses, Pyrrhus, Aeetes, Phaethon, Phlegon, are tired. Their fire is dim, a soft, glowing ember red. They are descending toward the waters of the Oceanus. The golden cup is waiting, the bed of the god. Helios steps down from the chariot. He removes the heavy, burning crown. He unyokes the beasts. He is no longer the terrifying judge, nor the grieving father, nor the imperial icon. He is just the weary worker of the cosmos, resting before the eternal cycle begins again. He lies down in the golden cup. the waters take him. The current carries him into the dark, beneath the roots of the world, through the realm of dreams and silence. He will sleep, and while he sleeps, we mortals will watch the stars, his distant cousins. But we know he will return. We know that no matter how dark the night gets, no matter how cold the winter becomes, the eyelid of the morning will open. The gates of Aeetes will swing wide, and the golden wheel will spin again. The sun never truly sets. It only prepares to rise. Thank you for walking this path of light with me. We have traveled from the first sparks of creation to the scrap metal of history. We have seen the cruelty and the kindness of the fire. If you have felt the warmth of this story, if you have seen the world through the golden eyes of the Titan, please leave a like and subscribe to Hearths of Myths. May your days be bright, may your oaths be true, and may you always find the middle path between the earth and the sky. Sleep well.